When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Routine, adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice an individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules, but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hi, welcome. We got a great lineup for you on the show tonight, and here's what you'll learn if you catch it. Beneath a redeveloped waterfront, construction crews dug up old soil, sealed off since the 1800s. Researchers added water and boom, stuff came back to life. So in 10 minutes time, we'll talk how creatures can be buried beneath the earth and after a century can come back to life. It's pretty cool stuff. After that, a visitor from interstellar space is streaking through our solar system. It's a comet, but an unusual one. Halfway through the hour, we'll discuss 3-Eye Atlas, the strange object with an unusual tail and chemical composition. Is it aliens? Probably not. All right, let's jump into the show. And in exciting relationship news, our foreign correspondent in London, England, is finally going to get sexy with his girlfriend. I am joined by Tony 5. This is really exciting news, but I want to start with this because it is completely related. The CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, Tony 5, by the way, welcome.
Thank you very much, my friend David. Yes, we're going to talk about my future love life with my electronic life combined.
There you go. So the CEO of ChatGPT has said they've worked out issues with people who are having mental health problems talking to ChatGPT. They figured out the safety, which, side note, I don't know that I believe them.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. First of all, you know what? Before I set this up, people using chatbots for mental health confidants as surrogate therapists.
You got me. You got me at that. You breezed over that, and I was going to hold you back up and rewind, select that, and say, if there's anybody out there who's using ChatGPT for mental health advice, I would really seriously consider it. It may be working for you, but you need to see a professional, people.
I agree. And Tony is definitely an amateur professional. Okay, there's like 7 layers to this story. Let's get to the first layer. The CEO says they're relaxing restrictions on OpenAI's ChatGPT tool, okay, which means that they will allow users to generate erotica, whether that's just raunchy texts or images, that we don't know yet. Okay, then the second layer of the joke, Tony's girlfriend he's going to be able to be erotic with. The joke is that Tony's girlfriend is ChatGPT. All right, I think that's all the layers.
And weirdly, like most of my real-time girlfriends, they've all got viruses.
What happens when ChatGPT gets a virus and someone infects it with it acts in a bad way? I don't know if that's even possible.
Would that be like digital herpes, David? Digital gonorrhea?
It could
David,
be.
These are the big pre's we need to talk about, right? Could a digital girlfriend get digitally pregnant or digitally cheat on you?
Maybe. I mean, technically, if you're talking to ChatGPT in a sexy way, it's talking to millions of other people. So you're in an open relationship. You're polyamorous is the correct language.
Is that why it's called OpenAI?
Ooh, wow. We're really peeling the layers off of the rotten onion here. But yeah, what do you think about this? I know that people kind of trick ChatGPT into being sexy with them, but it's always in I don't know. It's always in metaphor. It's never direct, because if you start asking it direct questions, not that I know from trying, it'll be like, no, sorry, we can't generate anything too adult, too pornographic or anything like that.
So those safeguards have been taken off now.
No, he's announcing that they're going to get there, and they're probably going to get there soon.
Wow.
So the safeguards are still there right now.
I don't know how I feel about that, because now we're entering a completely different age where that redundancy on human contact is becoming more and more visceral, I guess. It's very strange, like, that you can kind of replace somebody with so many things, but now it might be an actual, all singing, all dancing partner. And with those sex robots from Japan, I mean, that's me sorted for life.
You never need a friend again. Why are you even doing this show? We could just use an AI Tony because you'll just be in your apartment in your bed, just, hanging out. But young people, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Some high percentage, like I forget the number, but it's 30, 40, 50% of young people, Gen Zs, have asked ChatGPT to help them with like friendship dilemmas or boyfriend and girlfriend dilemmas. Like asking ChatGPT, should I dump my boyfriend because he did this? Like, it's wild to me that people are using these tools even to that degree. Now you could ask it, how should I, be intimate with my boyfriend? Describe it graphically, and it would tell you.
Do you think it's wild to you because it's so new to you? But for them, it's just like normal. Like for me, it was using, a touch-tone telephone. And then for your generation, it was, I don't know, watching Seinfeld. And maybe this is just normal for them. And actually we're the ones going, oh my God, why is it so strange? Is it a generational thing? Is it something that my father, grandfather, great-grandfather would say? Are we talking about it and the listeners listening to it thinking that, oh my God, look at you, you're fuddy-duddies and like, oh, you're so old? Or is it genuinely weird?
I don't know the answer to that question. Like, for example, my grandparents, may they rest in peace, if my parents played Tetris on ColecoVision all day, they'd be like, oh, you're rotting your brain. How can you play a video game? It's going to change the way you interact with humans. But they were just playing Tetris,
Yes.
I don't know. When calculators got introduced to the classroom, everyone said, our brains are going to rot. How could you not do long division by pen or I guess pencil? But or when computers got invented, it's like, oh, well, the typewriter is, you have to stop and think because if you make a mistake, you got to correct it with whiteout. Now you can just delete things. You're not going to learn how to spell. I don't know, Tony.
So like,
I don't know the answer to that.
You just mentioned some amazing things. And like you said, when I got a Game Boy, people were like, oh my God, you're going to get addicted to it and it's going to rot your brain. Now compare that to TikTok. So compare a 13-year-old Tony 5 with his Game Boy sitting there, right now to a 13-year-old from this era, constantly scrolling on TikTok, really irrelevant, really inappropriate material. That is the brain rot, which means that maybe this is just a cyclic behavior. Maybe in 5 years' time, the people that are now will say there's something else. Maybe they'll be injecting their brains with information, with something, and then we'll think that's weird.
That might be the case. Is it just the next generation dealing with technology that's a little better than we had, and it's a cycle, and it's the same thing? But surely there must be paradigm-shifting inventions that change the way we live dramatically, like the invention of electricity or commercial air flight. Like, there are certain inventions that it isn't a cycle, and they do shift everyone in society's paradigm. I don't know whether large language models and the way that people are using them for therapy as girlfriends, soon to be erotic partners, I don't know if that changes things or it's just the next generation getting slightly better technology and the older generation not understanding it. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anyone knows.
See, you're more sort of finger on the pulse because you've got that IT background, which I don't. And I don't know the strength of it. I don't know the capacity of AI, large language models. I know AI used to be just a small tool. Now it's going from a tool to the tool and the user of the tool simulation. Now what do you do? Like, where does it go? I can't see the limit. Like with electricity, you can kind of see the limitations. Like when electricity got invented and then homes were electrified and you had light in your own. With television, having your own sort of box. And then all the other minor iterations are silly. 3D, colour TV, immersive TV. Yeah, you can get that. But it will never get further than that, will it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if ChatGPT is a minor iteration, as you say it, like a calculator versus doing it by hand, or it's like a paradigm shifting thing, like the invention of the nuclear bomb. You know, like, I don't know. I think a lot of people would sensationalize it and say that ChatGPT and tools like it are paradigm shifting, but I think it's too soon to say. It really is.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that. And like you say, sensationalizing it is when AI is going to do this. And like there was a title of an article, you know?
Tony, I don't know how it happened, but we might have just had a thoughtful conversation for the last few minutes. Tony Five is our foreign correspondent in London, England. If you've been following Tony's journey, you'll have known, sadly, that he lost his dog. And later in the program, we will have veterinarian Dr. Cliff Redford on the show to talk about pet loss with Tony and I. Tony, thank you for being here.
Thank you, David. Yeah, and looking forward to it later.
Up next, buried soil sealed since the 1800s. Add water and it turns alive with worms and plants. What else is waiting to come back to life under our feet?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
When you dig up old soil in a waterfront, you might not expect to find much, but in fact, soil like that can be teeming with life, ready to spring into action at any minute. I am here with someone who recently analyzed soil in the Toronto waterfront and found worms, fleas, larvae, plankton, things ready to come back to life at any minute. I'm sure I described this science story slightly wrong, but she'll correct me. Her name is Dr. Shelby Riskin, and she is an ecology and evolutionary biology professor at University of Toronto. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
I buried the lead. And I know I said I wouldn't bring up your husband. Actually, I didn't say that. You are married to a great friend of the show, Dan Riskin, and I just want to know one embarrassing fact about him, and then we'll get to this story.
Oh, gosh. One embarrassing fact about him.
Does he have smelly feet?
You know, he doesn't have smelly feet. He gets a lot of belly button lint. Is that a good embarrassing fact?
That is actually a very good one. I'm going to figure out a way to use that against him. Let's talk about what you found in the soil. But first, what do you expect to find when soil in a waterfront, like on Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes, what do you expect to find when it gets dug up?
Well, I mean, the story is a little bit one of accidental discovery, because what made us start looking in the soil was not actually what might come back to life in terms of animal life, but plant life. So the mouth of the Don River, this big river that cuts through the center of Toronto, was filled in the late 1800s. And this project, they've recently been digging it out, and they removed 7 meters of fill from this, previously industrial area to try to make a more natural river mouth, reduce flooding there. And when they got down about 7 meters, they hit a soil that looked a little different than what was on top, and native plants started sprouting, cattails and bulrushes. And the construction workers actually called halt on the construction and the excavation because they thought this was so unusual.
Good on them. I feel like sometimes construction companies are like, "Oh yeah, don't say what amazing things we found because that'll pause the job."
Absolutely. And they did pause it. It was paused for a month or perhaps a little longer. And that's when they let us, a team of researchers from U of T, dig up these big bins of soil and take them to the greenhouse. And so our initial work was trying to see if we could excavate seeds and pollen from the soils and get plants to grow, to kind of show that those plants that spontaneously started growing were 100-plus-year-old seeds that had been buried for more than a century. It was hard to get those plants to grow. I have yet to, have a seed in my hand, put it in soil, and watch it sprout. That doesn't mean that those plants weren't spontaneous from these old soils. But what we eventually did is we took some kind of interior soil samples and put them in water tanks. It used to be a thriving wetland along this kind of mouth of the river. And that's when we saw all of this animal life emerge really quickly. So we had, these little water fleas swimming around. We had lots of larvae and worms munching around. Algae was growing, diatoms. The tanks kind of made their own little contained ecosystems really quickly.
It's kind of like sea monkeys, right? Like it's just
totally.
life hanging out there with just in stasis, basically. And you add a little water, you mix it around, boom, you got all this stuff that you didn't think was there. Is this unusual? Is it unusual for life, like worms and things, to just, I don't know, sleep for hundreds of years under the soil?
It's not unusual for a lot of microbes and very small organisms and animals to have some form of diapause or some form of dormancy for a long period of time. But this was especially a long period of time, and especially because the ecosystem was so altered on top of it. In some ways, it made a perfect storage container. It was dark, it was anoxic, it was cool under, all of these meters of fill. And that's what kind of makes it an extra cool story. It's a little bit like reviving an old ecosystem, a whole kind of system that was, buried. But it isn't unusual for, especially what's beyond the scope of our human vision, what's kind of microscopic in the soil, to turn off and on now and then in ecosystems.
Well, a well-known evolutionary biologist was quoted as saying, it's hard not to get really excited about this. That person, of course, was you. Why is this so exciting to take, soil that was destroyed kind of by humans, putting stuff on top of it to wreck a river hundreds of years ago? You get rid of that, and then boom, you got this old life coming back to life. Why is this so exciting?
Well, I like this story for a million reasons, but one that kind of gets what you're asking at is that humans have altered the planet in so many destructive ways, and urbanization, this kind of growth of cities, is one that's been particularly damaging to a lot of native biodiversity around the world, including in Toronto. We try to regreen areas or build kind of artificial wetlands and artificial ecosystems in our backyards and in our parks and recreate green space so that we get some amount of, the ecosystem services that green space provides, and also a place for biodiversity to thrive. But this shows an ecosystem that was damaged and destroyed, and when it was, exposed to water and air and sunlight, it just was able to turn back on. It wasn't actually, so degraded as to be unlivable. As Jeff Goldblum says, life always finds a way. It just is, to me, a real story of resilience, and that makes it really exciting. In the pollen record, we did find 2 tree species represented that are extinct in the city now. They're not extinct in the world. One almost is. But so there also was kind of evidence of what the ecosystem of Toronto used to be like prior to, our urban expansion and human impact. And I think that makes it cool too, what it was like before today, before skyscrapers and concrete.
So it's one part history lesson, like what the river used to look like, and it's one part a little bit of comfort knowing that if we kind of had destroyed certain wetlands in the past, we may be able to revitalize them and bring back the original species that live there a little easier than we thought.
I think that is a really cool piece of it. We don't usually think about keeping the soil intact that was once in an ecosystem that's become degraded. We usually, especially in a place where there might have been pollution or something, we often dig that soil out, throw it away, and put in clean fill or clean, basically potting soil. And I think sometimes maybe we're missing then, this microscopic layer that makes an ecosystem, or can build and help an ecosystem thrive. So I do think there's potential there for using native soils and native microbiota, not just native plants and things like that, to restore ecosystems and restore function.
Well, you quoted Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park saying life finds a way. My favorite quote from that movie was, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Aren't you worried you might reanimate some deadly worm that, could kill all of humanity?
Cool question. I'm not. I mean, this ecosystem was, one of the largest wetland complexes in Canada. It was 5 kilometers along the shores of Lake Ontario. It supported, fish nurseries, bird populations, a lot of native plant populations. And it is, to me, much more a story of restoring functionality that we've lost rather than potentially exposing biodiversity that we weren't expecting.
I agree. It was a silly question, but I am worried when they reanimate life from hundreds of thousands of years ago in the Antarctic, like ice. That's when I start to get scared.
Totally. And we have, I mean, microbes are turning on because of, melting permafrost and stuff. And that is interesting. This, I think, is unlikely. Although I will say that one of the initial reasons that they filled in this area is the ecosystem was already kind of degraded. People in Toronto in the late 1800s were, dumping sewage right into the lake, and there was a cholera outbreak. So part of the initial filling in was driven by, disease.
Wanting to protect us from cholera. All right, fine. We'll give our ancestors a break, I guess, a little bit. Well, Dr. Shelby Riskin is an ecology and evolutionary biology professor at the University of Toronto. Shelby, it was a great pleasure having you on the show, and it was very nice to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Coming up, an interstellar visitor is blazing through our solar system. It's a comet with a huge tail pointing the wrong way and chemistry unlike anything we've ever seen. The thing's totally alien. It's called 3I Atlas, and we'll give you more details about it after the break. Is it aliens, though? Probably not. But it could be an alien spacecraft. We haven't exactly ruled it out.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Marshalls, where you never have to compromise between quality and price. The buyers at Marshalls hustle hard, working to bring you great deals on brand name and designer pieces. Because Marshalls believes everyone deserves access to the good stuff. Visit a Marshalls store near you or shop online at marshalls.com.
We're broadcasting relationship truths and scientific discoveries with a comedian's touch. The last show with David Cooper.
It's time for science. We have a visitor from outside the solar system coming close to the Earth. And by close, I mean, close to the sun, not really that close. At the end of the month, it is 3I Atlas. It is the third object that is interstellar that we know of that is visited us, which is the past tense of visited. Probably. We are joined by scientist Dr. Jesse Rogerson, who's a professor at York University. He's got a book called Daydreaming in the Solar System, which you should buy. I definitely have bought it and read it, probably. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me back.
So, I know we talked a little bit about this comet, but as it gets closer, I feel like it's getting more and more exciting. And the more we learn about it, the more we realize it's different than any object we've seen before. So that means it's an alien visitor. Probably not.
Clearly, all signs point to it being an alien visitor. There is no other conclusion that could be drawn from all of the data that has been, and they've gathered a lot of data on this comet. I just, of course, clearly, the most obvious solution to this is that it's a comet. It's just a comet that's acting weirdly. And we could talk about the weirdness of it. So it came from out of the solar system.
We should, but okay. We've only observed 3 objects that have come from outside our solar system. So we have nothing to compare it to. We have no sample set, no sample. So yes, this object from interstellar space is weird. It's a little unusual. Its tail's pointing in the wrong direction, although we have examples of comets with tails pointing in the wrong direction. The composition is odd, but maybe all objects out there are weird, and that's normal.
Yeah, the thing about this is that exactly the sample size is small, and the object itself seems to be coming from a region of our galaxy that is older. So it's an older population. So the scientists are starting to think that based on the observations, based on the color of it, based on the chemical composition of it, based on the trajectory that it came into the solar system, how fast that it's moving through our solar system, all of this stuff suggests that where it came from is an older region of the Milky Way galaxy. And if it's an older region, then that would mean that the material from which it was created is different, has different mixing of chemicals than the material that formed the stuff that our solar system is made of, or even stuff that's nearby, other solar systems that are nearby. So if you have an older population, then when you see things like the color different, or the outgassing is different, or it's the coma, the outgassing that's creates the coma is more water than you expect, that could just be because it's an object of different population that we've never observed before.
Interesting. So what is it made out of? Like what is this comet made out of that is unusual, that isn't like comets that are gravitationally bound to our solar system?
So it has a lot of the same stuff. It's just the ratios that are weird. Like, for example, it has much more carbon dioxide to water than comets you'd find here in our solar system. So that ratio is really, really high. It also, and it's not just about the chemicals that are there. I mean, it also has a weird like nickel ratio, a nickel iron ratio. So, you have these small differences indicating like a gas cloud that it formed from was chemically different. But what I find really interesting is the way that it's outgassing. So it's this. We don't even have an exact size of how big it is, because we're not sure what's going on inside that coma. It could be a kilometer in size. It could be 5 kilometers in size. It could be less than a kilometer. But somewhere down there, where that nucleus of the comet is, it's coming through our solar system, heating up and outgassing much different than a normal comet would. In fact, it's outgassing water much farther away from the sun than it normally would, and any comet here would. And I think that either means two things. It means that the amount of water on board is different, or how it's captured is different, but it might be just suppressed under the rocks differently, suggesting that as it's probably been floating through our universe in the deep depths of space in between stars for billions of years, and it has undergone hardening and coverage of interstellar dust that has suppressed the ices. And so when it gets warmed up and the ices turn into gases, they come out in weird amounts that we're not used to seeing in our solar system, which I think is really interesting if you're trying to figure out what's going on in other solar systems.
I just learned the plural of ice is ices, which is to me just a fascinating thing right there. There are scientists making claims that it's an alien visitor. I don't think we can rule out that possibility, but there is no good reason to believe it is true.
It's like the same with UFOs, right? Like UFOs, when people say they see lights in the sky moving around, a possible explanation is that it is an alien spaceship flying around your backyard. That is technically possible, but it's definitely not the most likely scenario. And, the famous Avi Loeb is been very outspoken about all the the 3 interstellar comets we found, and saying these are probably space probes. And there is no evidence, no strong evidence to back that up. The much more likely scenario is that it is a comet. It looks like a comet. It's outgassing in a weird way, but it's a comet. It's made of cometary things in weird ratios.
Cometary. There's another new word. Ices and cometary. This is the ices commentary.
I don't know. I find that the strong push from that one voice to say for sure this has to be an interstellar spacecraft is just an odd. I don't know why that person is so keen to try and prove it when every argument they use is easily debunkable.
It's a fun thing. It gets people interested in astronomy. I don't mind when people discuss, could it be alien? But yes, there's no good reason to believe it. Just like I don't have definitive proof that the tooth fairy isn't real. I mean, when I was a kid, money appeared under my pillow. But I'm just saying I have no good reason to believe it's true. So we're not ruling it out.
Millions of children around the world every day collect data indicating that the tooth fairy exists. You're right, yes.
But I still don't feel we have a good enough reason to believe she is real. Of course, she is real. We know that. But I just saying, okay, it might be 0.0000001% chance it's an alien visitor, but there's no good reason to believe it. But it is really cool. And it is really cool that we have the telescopes and the technology to start discovering these interstellar, visitors, if you will, not sentient visitors, but this is something that we never really clocked until now.
And I think that you make a really good point, because it's great to discuss it. And I was just reading a paper the other day about a group that's saying, well, what if there were spaceships from other civilizations that were dead spaceships that are just floating through space? We have the Voyager spacecrafts, right? They're flying off from the sun right now. And if there are spacecrafts out there in the universe from other places, would we see them in our solar system as like interstellar visitors? And what would we look for? And what they're doing is they're going to old sky surveys, photographic sky surveys from like the 40s and the 50s, and seeing if they can find things moving through the sky before we launched things into space, and seeing if they match what you would expect a spacecraft to look like. And so far they found nothing, but the questions are worth asking, right? Very, very much they're worth asking. But when, in this case, I think that it's pretty easy to say, yeah, that's probably a comet.
Yeah, but it is cool that its tail's going the wrong way, that it's made up of stuff, that it's off-gassing, if you will. And it's an exciting thing. Will we get it? What will be the best look we get of it around October 27th or 28th, when it's the closest it'll be to us?
Yeah, it's going to make its closest approach, and then off it goes. So, there's an arsenal of observatories and spacecrafts, both on the ground and in space, waiting for the best. It's on the other side of the sun right now. So we can't observe it, but it's coming out eventually, and we'll get a much more data on it, and hopefully be able to convince Avi Loeb that it's probably not a spacecraft. But that's the beauty about this story, is that we only saw the first half. Is we're getting the second half of the story after it comes out the other side of the sun, and we're going to be able to ask more questions, get more data, and I think there's much more still to be learned about this comet.
I agree with that. The photos won't be dramatic. They won't be like HD 4K, but they will be a little better than what we have now. The object is called 3I Atlas. We'll be back with Dr. Jesse Rogerson as we discuss putting a nuclear reactor on the moon. Stay with us.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Nuke the moon, because you gotta nuke something. That's a subtle Simpsons reference. It's Science Talk here with Dr. Jesse Rogerson, who's a professor at York University. Check out his book, Daydreaming in the Solar System. And we are looking at maybe putting nuclear reactors, or some people would say nuclear reactors, on the moon to help us with all our lunar power needs, of which currently we have none. But in the future, we may have a lot. Jesse, welcome in.
Hey, man, let's talk about nuclear power on the moon.
Why not? You got to talk about nuclear power. It was nuke the whales on The Simpsons. And they're like, why would you want to nuke the whales? And I believe it was Nelson who said, you have to nuke something. It's a really stupid throwaway comment. But yeah, we're going to be on the moon, mining, studying. There will be bases there. There will be a presence there. We are going back to the moon. We've got energy needs, and I don't think burning coal is going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be novel here, right? A permanent presence on the moon is very different than what we did in the 60s and the 70s, which was dropping down for a day, 2, or maybe 3 days, depending on the mission. And there you can do it with your power needs are wrapped up in like batteries or solar power. It's quick and in some respects easy. But we are not interested in that anymore. Humanity in general wants to get further and further and further out into space, and this new interest in the moon is really a stepping stone. Obviously, there's lots to learn about the moon. We need to learn more about its origin, what it's made of, what the water is like there. There's lots of interesting geological questions about the moon, but we are using this, and it's long-term planning. We want to go to Mars, and we want to go farther. So we need to address things like how you grow food, how you deal with psychological effects of deep space exploration on humanity, and how do you develop power? And it's honestly, speaking as a Canadian, Canada is all about nuclear power, right? That's one of the best ways. In Southern Ontario, it's our number one power source is nuclear power.
And Canada has exported plans to the CANDU nuclear reactor to all kinds of countries. In fact, I recently asked the Atomic Canadian Energy Authority or whatever for plans, and they said to me, no can do. Just see what I did there? Can do. I'm just saying Canada is a well-known nuclear kind of powerhouse of a country that has great technology when it comes to nuclear power reactors.
I literally have family members who've worked on those exact projects where they take those plans and go to other countries and help build. Like it's in my family. So that CANDU reactor that we've come up with, this design is much safer. It's very efficient. It's less prone to all the dangerous things that you're worried about with nuclear power. And so Canada, the Canadian Space Agency, has put out for contracts on this. Okay, we're going back to the moon. We're sending a Canadian astronaut to the moon, Jeremy Hansen, in like a few months on board Artemis 2. And now we need to think about how can Canada contribute to the power needs of this ongoing base on the moon. And so they've got some contracts out. One to sort of develop this low enriched uranium sort of micro reactor, a small one that you could bring to the moon. But then also to another company, MDA here, a very big space company, to make it more autonomous and be able to run on its own, so that you wouldn't need a lot of human intervention.
I mean, we're also hearing about micro nuclear reactors for like tech companies to power ChatGPT's data centers and Google's data centers. I feel like in the next 15 years, we're going to see micro reactors not owned by provinces and states and countries and, official power organizations, but just companies are going to have them.
I've actually heard that too. I mean, like what's the best way to create power that's the cleanest and the safest? Nuclear seems to be the only way. I mean, you have one big glaring issue with it, and that is, what do you do with the waste? And that's definitely an important question to sort of wrap your head around. But it's not, thinking about all the other ways that we develop energy, this seems to be the cleanest and the most straightforward. So, tech companies doing it. Another great application for this is places that are very remote. Canada is got tons of remote communities, and maybe they might be interested in these micro reactors that would get them off of things like burning coal or diesels. There's communities in Canada that run almost 100% on diesel, which is just, nobody wants that, right?
Well, it's precisely Canada with its can-do attitude and its can-do technology. I'm going to keep on making these jokes. Ever try to ask one of your cousins or family members who works for these nuclear companies for money, for a loan, and they say no can-do? Okay, I'll stop. But I'm saying, what will these reactors be used for? Like mining, bases, all of the above?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things we want to do at the moon. All of the major operations at the moon that's going to come in the next 10, 20 years is going to be at the south pole of the moon primarily, because that's where we found frozen water at the bottom of these craters at the South Pole. There's water that's sitting there in ice form. We want to go there. We want to mine it. We want to see if we can use that water for humans, for doing growing plants inside of some sort of dome. Can we use it for fuel? Can we use it for breathing? Take the H2O and split it up. So you need power to run these facilities. That's what it would be for. A research outpost at the South Pole of the moon.
Let's go to our last story here. We found some rocks that are remnants of the way Earth was many billions of years ago, when things were very different. It was hotter, it was volcanically and tectonically active. There was all kinds of junk flying around in our solar system hitting us. Earth 4.5 billion years ago, you wouldn't want to hang out there, and you certainly wouldn't recognize it. But there's not a lot left over from it, like in a pristine way. A lot of it's been changed through erosion and life and geologic processes. How do scientists know that when they discover a rock, that it's old like that?
That's a great question. And I think what I love about this story is how a scientist or a group of scientists can take something that doesn't seem like it's that important and use it as a test to indicate something one way or the other. So I'll get to that in a second. It's all about potassium. But the story of our solar system is, we start as a big gas cloud. Gravity pulls everything towards the center. You form a star in the center. Most of the mass goes to the middle. It lights up and doing fusion, its own thing. And then a disk collapses around it, spinning around it. And inside the disk, you make planets and moons and asteroids and comets and stuff. And so everything in our solar system came from an original cloud of gas and dust that all had the same chemical makeup.
And do they call that a nursery, Jesse? And if so, it sounds like a chaotic and dangerous environment. Why does it sound like a nice place for children?
Certainly not the nicest place for human children, but the baby planets that we need to grow. This is the perfect place for those to grow and enrich. So this is the basic story. We've known about this for hundreds of years, this way that planets would form. But then there's this story of how do you get our moon out of it? Because our moon is gigantic, absolutely massive in comparison to Earth. It's almost like it's a double planet system. And the way we think that this occurred is that when Earth was this early protoplanet, that there was probably a massive collision between it and some other protoplanet, that the debris of which created the Earth and the moon. Now, that happened really early on, about 100 million years after the formation of everything. So it's so early on that any rocks that were there were probably completely scrambled by all the processes you're talking about. Not just the collision itself, but the literally billions of years of geological activity. So if there were rocks that existed, that still exist, from before that collision happened, the giant impact that created the moon, how would you find it? And it turns out you get into the way into the weeds of what isotopes of potassium exist in the rocks.
We got about 20 seconds. Why is this potassium so exciting to find? It just proves that this rock is old because it wouldn't exist in any other way if it was a newer rock?
So what they were able to show is that meteorites, or rocks that aren't on Earth, have a different makeup of the isotopes, 39, 40, and 41. And they found rocks that do exist on Earth have another kind. And then they found that if they simulate what the rocks would be like in the early times before the impact, that would have its own difference of ratio. And then they went to a couple of places around the Earth, found the ratios, and were able to see that those rocks probably formed before the giant impact.
Rocks from the early Earth. You heard it here first, Dr. Jesse Rogerson. Thank you for being here, Jesse. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Up next, one of the team members of this show recently lost a pet he adopted, a dog. That's an experience all pet owners have had or will go through. So let's talk coping, loss, and grief with our pets in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
So good, so good, so good.
Just in, thousands of winter arrivals at your Nordstrom Rack store. Save up to 70% on coats, slippers, and cashmere from Kate Spade, New York, Vince, UGG, Levi's, and more.
Check out these boots.
They've got the best gifts.
My holiday shopping hack? Join the Nordy Club.
Get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with your Nordstrom credit card. Plus, buy it online and pick it up in-store the same day for free. Big gifts, big perks. That's why you Rack.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Losing a pet ain't easy, and that is what we're here to discuss with Dr. Cliff Redford. Check out his podcast, Vet Life. It is Vet Talk or Pet Talk. That's the name of what we do. It's called Vet Talk or Pet Talk. Cliff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tony Five, our foreign correspondent in London, England, is also here, and he recently had to put down, sadly, his best friend, Frank. Tony, I wish I could introduce you under better circumstances.
Absolutely. I'm good, David. Yeah, it's been 2 days now since we put Frank to sleep. And yeah, first time I've ever had to euthanize a dog or even be there or anything. It was all completely new experiences. He passed on Monday, and on Sunday afternoon, I was playing ball with him in the park, and we were running around, and I was booking places to go with him, like, Airbnbs that are dog friendly. And yeah, so to give you a bit of a background as to what happened, he's a foster. We had any information about him at all, other than he'd been abandoned twice. And he was a beautiful dog. We did a DNA check on. He had some part American pit bull in him, which in the UK is very, very close to a banned breed. And he had spaniel in him and terrier in him. when I first got him, I couldn't really wash him. He would go crazy. And at first he bit me, and it was quite a really, like a very deep bite, very aggressive. And it went 0 to 100 and back from 100 to 0 almost instantly. But I sort of put it up, and I know it's going to sound awful, but it was like I was a domestic abuse victim, whereas I didn't blame the dog biting me. I said it must have been me. I had provoked him and whatever. Now, this happened a few times, and I didn't tell the charity, which in these cases, you usually have to tell the charity who give you the dog so that they can obviously deal with it. And I didn't, David. And what I ended up doing, and Cliff is listening to this as well, is that I tried to do more training. So I took him to various behavioural specialists who kind of said, okay, he's reactive. We don't know what he's reactive. Do some training with him, which is get him like muzzle trained, because I couldn't even take him to the vet. I couldn't take him grooming. He would lose his mind. And we'd got to a place where I was almost putting up with this bad behaviour. And weirdly, I've done it in human relationships. I've put up with bad relationships with girlfriends, thinking I'm the problem. It's not the girl or the dog or whatever. It's weird to mirror image this. And unfortunately on Sunday night, he was perfect. He was just lying down next to me. He was cuddly. He was absolutely fine. His eyes glazed over for no reason at all. And he launched at me. He took out like my thumb, which you can see in the Zoom meeting that we're looking at each other. You can see it. And then he had cut me here, which is this big old cut on my arm. And then he took out my wrist as well. And it had got too much. And again, human relationship, pet relationship, rather than thinking of myself, I thought, what if he had attacked my beautiful nieces or somebody in the park or my friend or even you, David? If you come to my house and he attacks you, I would never be able to forgive myself. So all night I sat there and I tossed and I turned, because I know if I tell the charity, there's no options, right, Cliff?
Yeah, this, unfortunately.
Like, you have to put the dog down. There's no option, because it's unpredictable. There's no options, right?
It's the right thing, but it doesn't make it easy.
Correct.
Yeah, look, when there's, well, you know what? Let me preface this with saying, I think you owe a big round of applause and a hug from all of us listening.
Thank you.
Tony. You telling your story is very brave. It is going to give people a lot of information. And make people safer and make the dog world as a whole safer as well. Unfortunately, there are differences between dogs that have like a behavioral problem and those that are just wired sort of differently or broken. And there's genetic susceptibilities to aggression, and certainly I'm sure there's a history that likely the charity didn't know about.
Correct.
But there is a history. And the fact that your puppy, your dog, bit without a trigger, without a noticeable trigger, makes rehabilitation near impossible. And even if you were able to just spend gobs of money and time, which it sounds like you were willing to do, you had done a lot of work on this guy, you have quite a heart, he would never be trustworthy around anybody. And
Correct.
Maybe you can protect yourself. Maybe you sort of are aware of the susceptibilities, but other people in society and your family members wouldn't be aware. I hope this doesn't take away from the value of rescuing a dog.
And the value of the time that you and Frank had together, which was so wonderful.
So to preface again, Cliff, we spoke before. I got him at a very difficult period in my life when I was just recovering from severe depression. So he was my lifeline. He was my medication. He got me out. And I'd heard all these things. Everything you said, I've heard in the last 2 days. He might have been wired incorrectly. He could have been abused. That we'll never, ever know. I could have spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on him and you'd still never know what triggers him, why it triggered. It's just something in his brain that is just doing it. That was heartbreaking to accept. Now, I'm a fairly big guy. I've got a martial arts background. I was fast enough to be able to defend myself, even though I got cut. my friends at home, my nieces who are 6 and 8 would not have. He could have killed them. The jaw strength on those dogs is over 250 PSI, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's about like 320 for a pit bull.
Correct. So, I mean, you're talking a hell of a bite pressure. He could take out major veins, major arteries. He could disfigure. And I walk him in parks. Now, if I can't muzzle him, now I'm adjusting my own life to taking him out at 1 o'clock in the morning. That is not a life for me anymore. But I would have done it if I'd have known that. And I started basically adjusting my life and putting up with this sort of sad, bad and mad behaviour, quite literally, which I've done with girls, weirdly enough. But he brought me so much comfort, whereas I'd have quite easily euthanized half of my girlfriends, to think about how he would have done for this poor Frank. And I'd saved him, I'd saved his life. And I changed my car, Cliff, for this dog. I had a small car. I bought a bigger car for him. I moved stuff in my house and bought a crate, but I didn't want it to be a prison-looking crate. So it was a dog house made of wood with his name on it. And I'm now in the process of cleaning up. Like David and I have spoke about death cleaning, and now I'm doing it for a dog. It's heartbreaking, man. It's absolutely soul-destroying.
It is. It can be difficult, and look, don't rush into getting rid of his stuff. And again, it was so brave of you, and kudos to you for being there when he was passing away. A lot of people can't, and I get that, and I understand. You really need to be present for your pet when they're passing away. I think most people believe that after the fact. But as far as cleaning up, yeah, definitely tidy up, but don't rush in getting rid of things. Like embrace or at least accept the pain that you're going through. Lean on your friends like David and like myself and people like your family, your nieces. Talk well of Frank, but hopefully you talk well and think well about yourself as well, because you gave him so much more love and patience and opportunities than the average person would have. And I think it's why you stick it out with these crazy women that you've been with in the past. Like, you are a loving, strong man who wants to help, wants to give people and animals a chance. Your puppy soulmate is out there, so don't give up on it.
All right, we'll be back with Cliff talking about how climate stress can weaken bumblebees. It's everything to do with pets and vets and talking. It's Vet Talk and Pet Talk. Tony Five, thanks for being here, buddy.
Always a pleasure, my friend. See you later, Cliff.
Cheers, dude.
We'll be back with Cliff Redford in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
For those who know that questioning everything includes questioning this show's existence. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are here with Dr. Cliff Redford, a veterinarian. It is Vet Talk or Pet Talk. And before the break, we were sharing kind of a sad story about pet loss. Let's flip it over to the opposite side. Pet gain. Adopting a pup. Cliff, welcome back.
Thank you. Or adopting a cat. Or a bunny.
Or cockroach or ferret. I have a friend with a ferret. He's a weird guy, I gotta say. Are ferret people normal? That's my first question.
No. But I mean, normal means, within that average of the bell curve kind of thing. And they're definitely on the fringe. But I'd rather be on the fringe. It's where the excitement happens.
He's an older gay man and he hits on everyone, including me. That's how indiscriminate he is. And one time I was with him, he had his ferret in his hand and I was chewing some gum and he said, "Give me a piece of that gum." And I said, "It's my last piece in my mouth." And he just puts out his hand. So I give him my gum because I think he's kidding. and then he starts chewing it. And that's, you know what, that vignette is the classic ferret person right there. Chewing disgusting semi-digested gum in one hand and ferret in the other. Ferret people are weird. And if you're a ferret person, I apologize, but you're weird.
I think we might need to want to go do a safety check on that ferret.
Yeah.
See if things are okay.
The ferret is plump, the ferret is loved. At least there's that. Adopting a pet, though. How does it work? Because I didn't realize when you go to the pound, you come home with a pet. Because my girlfriend had wanted a cat a lot, and she's like, let's just go to the SPCA or whatever to browse. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know how it works. There in our new apartment now, there's a cat place an adoption place on the corner, and she keeps on trying to get me to go in. I now know one does not go into the pound without leaving with a pet.
If she ever says, let's go to the jewelry store just for fun and look at wedding rings, we're not going to get married. Let's just for fun.
I guess.
Get ready. That is a hint.
She ain't like that, but with the cats, she is like that.
She was totally there.
Anyway, how do you go about, if you've never owned a pet or you're curious, you want to rescue a pet, how do you even start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to adopt, not shop, as the saying goes. And rescue pets need love. And people assume that rescue pets are troubled, and there's problems. And that's rarely the case. And the thing is you don't just go to the shelter usually and just come back with a pet. A good shelter manager will walk you through the process because they want to make sure it's the right fit. And let's talk about dogs. You have to look at your lifestyle.
We got interviewed by the shelter. I'm like, who's adopting who here, But it makes sense. They want to make sure their animals aren't going to go into a cruddy environment.
Yeah, because not everybody, if it didn't work out with you two and Tomato, not everyone brings the animal back to the shelter. Sometimes they just dump them on the side of the road, like that old Warner Brothers cartoon with Elmer the Fudd and the dog.
Awful.
It does happen, and so it's very, very sad. So you have to look at your lifestyle. Make sure, do you have the time? Do you have the energy to deal with an active dog, or do you want a dog that's a little bit more quiet? Obviously, talk to the shelter expert about that dog's particulars. Temperament, not only the breed, but that specific dog. And then what history does the dog have? They should know if that dog is going to be good with other dogs, good with children, needs to be alone, has separation anxiety issues, a history of biting. All these things are important to find out, right? But the great thing, though, is following, once you pick out a dog, or to a lesser extent, let's say a cat, follow the 3-3-3 rule. And what that is the first 3 days, you give your dog time to decompress. Just give it space, set your boundaries. Are they going to be allowed on the couch? Are they going to be allowed on the bed? That sort of thing. And have your daily routine going, but do not expect and do not force interaction upon them, right? They don't know you. They don't know the place. They're going to be feeling a little nervous. Let them sort of sit quietly in the corner if that's what they want to do.
So 3 days, transition time, moving from a shelter to a new home with new people, it's very disruptive.
Yeah, exactly. And then it takes about 3 weeks for them to settle in and learn those behaviors. You can work on basic training. You can sort of have calm, consistent corrections when they make mistakes. And you praise every single success. And then the final 3 is 3 months. It takes about 3 months for that dog to feel fully secure and trusting of your sort of love and your relationship with them, for them to start seeking out your affection, almost like a reward. Now, there's a variability, but get ready for up to 3 months for that dog to become the air quote perfect companion. And so it's just patience. It's patience and time, and then you're going to be a hero. You rescued this dog that needed saving.
Yeah, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. It's nice. Before the break, I was talking about bumblebees, Cliff, and this story is maybe too cool not to cover, although it is kind of sad in a way.
No, there's a good ending to it.
There's a happy bee ending. I love bees, except for when they're too close to me, and then I freak out because I'm worried they'll sting me. But the truth is, the stings don't hurt that much unless you're allergic, in which case, of course, you can die. But I feel like they get confused with wasps, whose stings hurt a lot.
Yes.
Because I've been stung by both, and it's like day and night. A bee, it sucks, but a wasp, it's brutal.
And the bee dies when they sting you.
So you got to give them props for that. They really wanted to sting you.
Like, so they don't want to sting you. If you're just calm, they're going to leave you alone.
They really don't like you, whereas wasps, they're just whatever.
They're like, whatever.
You.
They're just sticking a little bit of butt toxin into your skin.
Exactly.
And then flying away. So there's this article in the Journal of Animal Ecology, this study, that showed that climate stress is weakening bumblebees. And if it weakens the queen bee when they're young, it can affect the hive for the entire life of that hive. But the thing is so when we think about bumblebees, we think about them flying around in this gorgeous sunny weather. And so maybe if the temperature goes up, it's not going to negatively affect them, right? That's kind of what I thought. But the reality is there's a lot of damage to their health as the temperature climbs. And whether you want to argue if climate change is human caused or not, it is changing, period.
I don't want to argue that. I listen to what the scientists say. I don't argue like an idiot without knowing what's going on. But not important. That's a conversation for someone else.
There you go. But what happens is as the temperature climbs, the bees come out of kind of a winter hibernation early. Therefore, they're active for longer during their summer period, let's say, and they overuse their energy reserves. They basically starve themselves. They are training for a marathon, and then the temperature changes, and now they got to run a double marathon. You know what that's like. Come on, David. You've done a bunch of those.
I walked to the corner store and lost my breath because I'm out of shape. I know what that's like.
Exactly. So you know exactly what it's like. The other issue, too, is if the rain increases or occurs at the wrong time, it makes their sort of hunting for pollen or flying around buzzing for pollen very, very difficult. So climate change and increases in temperature and global warming not only damages the ecosystem, it damages these bees, and it actually damages our agriculture. So bees pollinate things like tomatoes and other fruity vegetable types.
Yeah, our farming requires bees. But where's the happy ending?
The happy ending is there's a lot we can do. So it's very difficult for us, the average person, to affect climate change. I know I'm trying. I'm leaving my door open when the air conditioning is on as much as possible.
I'm eating less foods that make me gassy.
Perfect. Well, methane, and little radio hosts and cows produce a lot of methane. So that happens. But the reality is all we got to do is plant flowery gardens.
All right. Well, Dr. Cliff, thank you for the happy ending. It's nice to know an individual can have a small impact on bees and their welfare. It's Vet Talk. Check out Dr. Cliff Redford's podcast. He said sort of wrong. It's called Vet Life. Cliff, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thursday is International Bosses Day, and since it's Wednesday, we've got Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, celebrating Thursday's International Bosses Day by discussing how to deal with a horrible boss.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Tito's Handmade Vodka is America's favorite vodka for a reason. From the first legal distillery in Texas, Tito's is 6 times distilled till it's just right. And naturally gluten-free, making it a high-quality spirit that mixes with just about anything. From the smoothest martinis to the best Bloody Marys. Tito's is known for giving back, teaming up with nonprofits to serve its communities and do good for dogs. Make your next cocktail with Tito's. Distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Inc., Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always the last show with David Cooper.
On Thursday, it's International Bosses Day. And because it's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, we are here to celebrate and talk about dealing with tough bosses, maybe tough coworkers. Gary Direnfeld is here. He is a social worker. He is a therapist. He is an expert in family and marital therapy. And he joins us every Wednesday for a show that's meant to air on Thursdays. Gary, my goodness.
Oh, my God. The alliteration that goes on. Here we are.
Here we are.
I've been a boss. I've been bossed?
I've also been a boss and also been bossed. I did not like bossing. Did you like managing people?
For the most part, yes, because I also did the hiring, and I hired I really went for lovely people. You know, most people have the basic skills. And so then it comes down to personality. Who do you see yourself spending your day with?
Yeah.
Would you like to put up with this person? Would you enjoy their company?
I once hired someone who was lovely in the interviews, and when it came time for him to negotiate salary, his starting salary with the company, I was the face of that, and the HR person assigned to the hiring case was assigned to negotiate salary with this guy, and he was rude and entitled, and he treated the HR person really bad, and I was like, what is going on? And I asked my boss, what should I do? He was lovely in the interviews, and now this really ugly side is coming out, and my boss said, hire him based on the way he was in the interviews. A month later, my boss quit. This guy started. He was a problem. And then I said to my new boss, well, this was the advice I got, and my new boss is like, what? You should have not hired him if he was a jerk. I don't know. He was a problem. Yeah.
I did have to work with this one fellow. I had developed a private brain injury rehabilitation program in the 1990s. And I was given virtually an unlimited budget to do it. A very extraordinary situation. But along with that, I had no choice in the hire of 3 remarkable professionals, one of whom drove me nuts. Very entitled person. And I said, here's your budget for getting some office furniture. And he spent 4 times his budget.
Great.
And I'm losing sleep because he was probably 25 years older than me. I was in my late 30s, I think. So I found it intimidating. And I lost several nights' sleep. So finally, I realized after several nights of being sleepless, I just got to confront this guy. The furniture is going back, and I'm buying his furniture on a go-forward basis. And that's exactly what I did. I felt kind of merciless, yet he, in a sense, asked for me to set that boundary. So I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk bad bosses, because I've had a boss that you can't trust, someone who doesn't make you feel safe in your job, someone who'll throw you under the bus, acts like a snake. And that boss actually wasn't as bad as the boss who pushed me really hard. I had one boss who was so demanding. He kind of demanded 200% out of everybody. And I think his goal was just to get like 110%. The goal was to push you as far as you could go and a little further by setting the goalposts so far from what was actually realistic. And I found out later that he didn't actually mind that I didn't meet all his demands. He was behind the scenes trying to just push me. But every morning I'd wake up and feel like, how am I going to get through this day?
Yeah, there are those persons who seek to motivate their employees. Some do it really well, and others do it unreasonably, even though they're trying to come from a good place. And there you are, the employee, trying to live with this. And how do you manage? There's long been a concept as well called managing up.
Yes.
So rather than you being managed by them, you're kind of learning to manage
your own boss.
Yeah. So, at some point, it all depends on who you are, your environment, the workplace, etc. But hopefully you can speak your mind. And I appreciate that if financially you're in a precarious spot and your job is precarious, unfortunately you may have limited choices. But where you're feeling less precarious, I suggest to people that they do speak up, not from a mean place, not from an angry place, but to say, look, here's what's on my plate. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Was that your intention? Or, I'm going to need more support or time in doing this. And you have to be clear as to what your boundaries are. Much like with your parents or a friend or your spouse, you have to own yourself in all of these situations.
Your coworkers are kind of like a family, like a parallel to family. You're forced to work with them. In
Yes.
life, as an adult, you get to choose your friends, but you can't choose your family, and you can't necessarily choose your coworkers.
Yeah.
And so you got to go to work every day. And if you've got a boss who's, not compatible with you, you got to deal with that. And that's part of being an adult.
I hear from so many educational assistants across Canada because they are in precarious job situations. They're tasked with doing things these days that are beyond their role. And I'm forever counseling or guiding them. Send emails, document what you're doing and what you have to do, even if that email is sent to yourself, by the way. So I'm sending myself an email to keep track and let there be a record of this ask that's just been placed on me. So if the situation ever comes home to bite me, I have something to rely on. But I also suggest that they send those emails to administration and to their union so that there is a record of your concerns being raised. At the end of the day, that's such a common expression. Anyways, at the end of the day,
Gary didn't take his ADHD medication
today. If it isn't documented, there's no evidence that anything has happened. So if you want recourse, document.
Can also be for your own sanity, just to know that certain things are happening or know that your boss is treating you a certain way.
Yeah, but always remain respectful. I've said this in other contexts. When we communicate, we want people to concentrate on the message that you're seeking to communicate, not your delivery. So if you come across rude, hostile, disrespectful, angry, people are going to comment on your tone, your feelings, your behavior. The message and the issue gets lost in that.
Yeah. So you're forced every day to work with this boss. Is there things in their behavior may not be in your control? Is there things you can do that are in your control to help manage a cruddy situation with a boss who is either an absentee, doesn't give you the support you want, doesn't make you feel seen or get any recognition for your work, or even worse, like a bully? Because I know when dealing with family members, you can't control their behavior. We've said this a million times, but you can control your own. Can that same lesson apply to bosses? You can't control their behavior, but there's things you can do to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. You do want to remain calm. Like I said, you do want to be respectful. The other thing that you can do is check out with colleagues. What is your experience with, this employer, with this boss? How are you managing? What are you doing? Is it just me, or is there something common about this? Or is there a feature of myself that somehow or other gets picked up on?
Well, it's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We're celebrating International Bosses Day on Thursday. On Wednesday, we are here with Gary Direnfeld talking about dealing with bad bosses. We'll be back with more of this in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 50% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
When the day is done, we're just getting started. The Last Show with David Cooper.
It is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, which means it's International Bosses Day on a Thursday, tomorrow on a Wednesday, that we're talking about today here with Gary Direnfeld, a therapist. We are discussing dealing with bad bosses. Before the break, we were talking about managing our own behavior. You know, I think we talk about this a lot when we're discussing family issues, Gary. You know, you've got that mother-in-law who behaves irrationally, dysfunctionally. You can't change her.
Or father-in-law. Let's be an equal opportunity here.
Fair enough. I don't know why I'm picking on my fictitious mother-in-law, even though I'm divorced. My former mother-in-law was lovely, but I probably shouldn't talk about her. And I won't, even though I am. I mean, I'm mentioning her, and I'm mentioning not talking about her, which is talking about her, but I'm not going to talk about her, and I'll stop ranting. I'm just saying, when dealing with family issues like a Thanksgiving and a loudmouth uncle, you can control your own behavior, but you can't control the other parties. That lesson, does it apply to bosses, even coworkers? Does it apply to dysfunctional situations in the workplace?
Yeah, and I want to give you another strategy for managing your boss. They may be unreasonable, they may be unruly, they may be rude, they may be discourteous. And as much as it irks you to, anger you, whatever, try using empathy instead. You seem to be off today, boss, or something seems to be bugging you, or this seems to be quite a concern. Is there something going on that I should know about? Is there something I can do to be helpful to you? It is so much harder to be nasty towards someone who is being overtly nice to you.
It's my mother's lesson of kill them with kindness. And I know my mother didn't make that up, but she always says that. Kill the people, and it's so violent. Kill with kindness.
Kill them with kindness. You can literally do that with a colleague or a boss as well. And so I'm not advocating for one strategy over another. I'm saying there are a range of strategies. It will always be up to the person in the situation to try and figure out what will work best for them. But this strategy of using empathy, again, it's hard to lash out against someone who's being reasonable and nice. So, you just seem out of sorts today. Are there some things that I can take off your plate? Is there some issues that I should know about? Open up the discussion from that place rather than personalizing all attacks, thinking, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me. I want you to be self-assured. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my work. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. So what is going on with this person? And you can even say that, you know what, boss, I'm actually performing pretty well on this. And so I'm not sure where you're coming from, if your issue truly is with me or something else is bugging you. And if it is with me, I still don't get it. Help me to better understand the problem. And when you put it back on them, it forces a person to have to rethink their own actions, behaviors, and what they've had to say. And sometimes having that second sober thought helps a person through that reflection to settle down.
Interesting. Have you had any particularly bad experiences with a boss?
I've worked in a couple of poisoned workplaces. One of them, I'm really going back a lot of years.
At least 15 minutes, yeah.
Honest
earlier in the day.
God. But I worked in this one workplace where a colleague was truly unethical. And I would bring that to the attention of management, who totally ignored it. And I looked like this disgruntled employee. And, I went to a colleague and said, look, this is going on. How are you putting up with this person? And I said, I've brought it to the attention of management. And the person said, look, when you get into the mud with the other pigs, Gare, we can't tell the pigs apart. That was a message to me.
Yeah, it's a race. What is it? The race to the bottom. Everyone loses.
Yeah, And I actually handed in my resignation and gave 2 weeks' notice.
Goodbye, Gary. Yeah.
Yeah, because, look, there are going to be some of those circumstances where, despite our best intentions, the workplace is poisoned. And it's going to remain poisoned despite our best efforts. Our choice winds up being stay or go. Can you put some structures in place to make it manageable, keeping your head below the bar, kind of hiding, doing the bare minimum and just getting away with things? And if you can't, you may have to look on.
Yeah. I've been like managed out of a company and I've had like a boss meet behind my back to try to get rid of me. But reflecting back on that period, like I was not doing great on the project I was leading and it was my fault. So at the time I felt very like, you're a terrible boss. Why are you meeting with my coworkers to try to get rid of me? But I kind of deserved it. So if you'd asked me like 10 years ago who my bad boss was, I would have been so angry with this person. Why didn't they work with me to try to get me on the right path and this, that, and the other? But they kind of did try to work with me to get me on the right path. I just didn't get on the right path. So I guess I've been pretty fortunate. It really just was that one boss that I mentioned before the break who pushed me too hard. And that was some of my my best years of my career in terms of output and getting promoted and doing great. But just every day I'd go home and this boss would put too much pressure on me, which is like not a nice way to treat people. But no. I didn't have like a boss that was a sociopath and like, threatening me or, that people have to deal with.
I'd like to tell you about an almost boss that I had who was fabulous. After I did hand in my resignation on the one that I talked about, I was looking for, I wasn't looking for work, but I met with a friend of my father's and I was telling him the situation. He was in the window business back in the day. And he looked at me and he offered me a job.
Gary Direnfeld, window salesman?
That was the job. And he was going to double my salary plus commission.
Had you ever sold a window before?
No, but I had sold before. So I could do that. He was it was amazing. And I said, yes. 2 weeks before I started, I felt my anxiety building because I didn't want to be a window salesman. I wanted to be a social worker, even though clearly it would pay me less.
We could have done Window Wednesdays with Gary, and we could just every week talk about how to sell windows. So this could be a different life,
So I went to this guy, Walter Peterson. He's no longer with us. He was a great guy, though. I went to Walter and I said, Walter, I'm sorry to disappoint you. You've made me such a generous offer, but I can't start in 2 weeks as I said that I would. And he looked at me and talk about empathy and compassion. And he said, look, Gary, you have to differentiate between temptation and opportunity. I tempted you. It wasn't your opportunity. And he easily let me go.
Is there anything to having empathy for our bosses? And I know we just have like 45 seconds left, but that was one thing I wanted to talk about, and you mentioned at the break. Having more empathy for our bosses, even if they aren't the people we want them to be.
Yeah, you got to realize they have pressures of their own that are often unbeknownst to us. And so expressing that empathy, it creates a relationship, hopefully a better relationship between you and the employer that you can draw on. Think of it as putting money in the bank. This is putting money in the relationship bank. And in truth, we want to do that with everything. Using that empathy. How's your day, though? Is there anything I can do to make things easier for you? Like a cup of coffee. So as we do that, because so much of the workplace is actually relationships.
Gary Direnfeld, check him out online. Just search Gary Direnfeld on what? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Grindr, all of it. Gary, what a pleasure it was to have you on the show.
And you'll only find me on Facebook, though.
That's a wrap on our show. Thank you for tuning in. The Last Show podcast. Check it out and subscribe. More details at www.lastshow.pizza, the website. That's .pizza, not .com. I'm David Cooper, and this was The Last Show. We will catch you tomorrow night.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu, is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.